Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today's episode 168, and we're going to be interviewing Jay. How you doing this morning, Jay?
Hi, good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
good.
So you're West Coast time, so this is bright and early for you.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
Not
thank you so
bad.
much for doing it. Did you get up early just for this?
No, I'm usually up around like 6:37 every day, so this is
Oh,
perfectly fit.
perfect. All right, so let's get the party started here. I ask everybody the same question first. Tell me about your childhood and growing up.
Okay, yeah. So I definitely had I didn't realize my childhood was dysfunctional until I was like 10. And my parents got divorced, but I on paper had a pretty peaceful childhood up until 10, until I started to discover certain things that happened. I had like flashbacks, like once I got a bit older, like when I was in my teens, I started to remember like early onsets of abuse, like sexual abuse, physical abuse, things like that. Like from like 5 to about like 7 or 8.
So you
Um,
you said your memory got triggered around 10. Was it the divorce that triggered it, or was something else happening?
yeah, the divorce for sure. And I think my father became more outwardly angry and more expressive around that time. I remember him differently. Like he was very kind and like I was such a daddy's girl. And then when my mom divorced him, he I saw a whole different side of him. So that became, I don't know, I think that kind of was where the shift was. And then there was a lot of upheaval with the divorce and
And
moving.
what? So, but the abuse was going on before the divorce.
Very much so. Yeah, definitely. Like my father like physically beat me. The most vivid time I remember was probably around 8 and made me walk to school because I didn't finish my homework. Um he would like try to teach me multiplication when I was like 4. Um, I was too young to really like retain it, and he would try to teach me and then hold my head underwater.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so like if I got it wrong, and I'd have to like stay underwater for a significant amount of time until he let me up. Um, so yeah. So like definitely physically abusive, like very
Did he?
early.
So did he do it? And obviously, I'm not giving him an excuse, but did he claim there were reasons, or did besides like the homework and stuff, or was it always like something? What was he like picking apart everything you did?
Yeah, constantly. I didn't really know whether I was coming or going with him, and then there's a lot of denial around that. And so of course you go through this phase where you're like, oh my God, like was I dreaming, because he's never really fully owned up to it, and will kind of act like it didn't happen shortly after too. So yeah, that was a lot, early
Yeah,
on, and
I'm
just
the
very
same way,
confused.
and I know it probably makes you feel a little crazy because there were things that happened to me as a kid, and when I bring
Hmm.
it up to my dad, he acts like he has no idea what I'm talking about, and then I have to say to myself, does he really forget, or is he just a complete bullshitter?
Yeah. Well,
It's
you know
hard
what I
thing to. No, you go.
it's I think what I've now come to is I think it's difficult for them to admit that they've failed us in any capacity. So, however, and I'm not excusing it, but however they're going to do it, the denial piece I think is a way to keep them safe because they'll have to own up to the fact that they failed their child. And I think that's so difficult for a parent to do. And I just recently came to this where because I started my forgiveness process with my parents. So that is, what I've been able to kind of come to so that I could at least move forward for my own life and and forgive them in some capacity.
How was your life at school during this time? Did it affect every part of your life, like friendships and things? How did that work?
Yeah, most definitely. That's a really great question. Definitely. I hated school. Hated school.
How come?
And but I was always trying to give it another shot. I was like, well, maybe, today's Friday. I love Fridays. Fridays were like my like saving grace. I loved Fridays. And I'm like, well, maybe we're gonna watch movies at school and I don't have to talk to anyone. I can just like eat pizza or something, and so I kind of like look forward to Fridays. But yeah, I mean, I definitely I was bullied, but I was bullied in this weird way where people would wanna um they wanted to be friends with me and kind of like get close, and then like 2 days later, like they're not your friend anymore. And that was like elementary school. A lot of that went on early education, just a lot of back and forth with people. And I found that with like a lot of people in my life, just extremely inconsistent very early on, which totally affected adult relationships. I'm still, in a healing process from all that.
Did you do good in school? How were your grades?
I was a straight A student all through school.
I find that a lot. I find a lot of kids that were abused. This is just through my interviews that a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
did pretty good in school for some reason. Me personally, I did terrible in school because my shitty life affected every part of my life.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. It's hit or miss. It's
Yeah,
like no C students either. Like it's either you're like at the tip top or no, I've noticed that too.
yeah.
Being
No, I
in
was at the
12
bottom.
step programs.
I barely graduated. I remember he was one of my football coaches, and he was my history teacher. What was his name?
Hmm.
Gillick, I think, Mr. Gillick, Coach Gillick. And he looked at me. He goes, "You failed." He goes, "But I don't want to see your
Wow.
face." He goes, "I don't want to see your face again next year." He goes, "So I'm giving you. This is at the end of the year. This we're
Wow.
deciding if I graduate or not." And he goes, "I'm going to pass you with a D." He goes, "I
Wow.
honestly," he goes, "I just don't want." He said because I don't want to see your face again next year.
Oh
Because I
my
was a trouble.
God.
I was a troublemaker. I remember one year, um, my new class, my teacher said, and I didn't know what the word meant at the time. She goes, "Oh, the infamous Jimmy Rachel's," and I was just like, "Oh boy, here we go." Because
Here we
I
go
was,
again.
yeah, I was a troublemaker. I look back and I had no excuse for it. I mean, I could look back and say it was like my parents' fault. I had a lot of shitty
Mhm.
things going on at home, but can't put the full blame on someone, right?
Yeah, yeah, but that definitely affects because it's like when you're a kid, I mean, it's their job to keep you safe. It's their job to cover you. They did fail. And that's like one thing that, but it's like, what do you do about it going forward? But they did fail. Like, we don't have to like act like they didn't fuck up, Like,
But the
like
one
there's
thing
all this like, oh, like
The
they,
one thing I
you
could say is my
know,
mom has made up for it. My mom, I speak
oh,
to her once a week. She's there for me. And I didn't force her to, but I said, Mom, you kind of fucked up as a child when I was a child. And
yeah,
she acknowledged it. She goes, I tried my hardest. That maybe I didn't do as good as I could have. She
wow,
acknowledged it. So that was like a huge, like, I don't feel crazy anymore. My whole
yes,
life, I felt crazy. Like nothing happened, but I'm making up stories or something.
yeah, 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 yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing to get that apology. It's like
Yeah. And now we
I try not
talk
to
once
hold
a
my
week.
breath for for it,
Yeah, don't
but
hold your breath. My dad, he's the opposite. He'll go to his grave saying nothing ever happened.
oh yeah, oh yeah. My dad thinks he's father of the year, 100%.
Yeah.
And you know, if he wants to believe that, that's okay. Now I'm okay with it now. You know.
Yeah, we go through our therapy or whatever that we realize we can't control others.
Yeah, yeah. That's the part that is very sobering because it's just you do I don't know, like when you go from victim to victor, I feel like I had a transition to that where I was just kind of like, I am everything's happening to me. This is like, I'm this way because my parents were like this. Nobody taught me. I don't have any plans of changing. And I think that's where I'm really grateful to have made that transition to, you know, victor instead of victim because that was a brutal place to be, and not being able to like see past my childhood and the things that have happened to me and being angry at my parents. So it was a really small place to live. It's very it's like addiction all over again. um just being addicted to self-sabotage because I don't know any better, and being angry, that plays into it too.
Yeah, I like what you said that you're the victor, not the victim. I've never heard that before.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I mean, I just remember the going through, I'm in a 12-step program, going through the steps for the first time. I just saw so many patterns in my life, and I was like, wow. And then my perspective just really started to shift into this place of like, wow, now I'm on the other side, I'm overcoming. But where you can't get cocky is I overcame, therefore I don't need the stuff that helped me get into a space of overcoming, and thinking that you don't need some form of like support group or recovery process, or thinking that you're not um an addict, or that it's over. And it is over to a certain extent today, right here, right now, because I am, you know, abstaining from this thing. But it's never, I think the work doesn't stop. There's this not this point where you're just like, yay, like I'm free. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, you're free, but you get what I mean. It's
Yeah.
it's uphill and onward while doing the work.
So sounds like you graduated high school being a straight A student. What did you do after high school?
Oh yeah, yeah. And by the way, I hardly went to school.
Really? How come?
And somehow graduated. Once I turned 16 and I got a car, I was off to the races. But I don't know how I it was purely grace that I got through high school. But after high school I did go to art school in Chicago.
Oh,
I went
nice.
to Columbia in Chicago, and I got a scholarship actually. And I was in danger of losing that scholarship. And the only way that I was there is really expensive school was because of that scholarship. And they sent me I had to stay on the dean's list to maintain it.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got a letter. I was drunk as a skunk and opening my mail and we got a letter that I was had fallen off the dean's list and I was in danger of losing my scholarship. So my academics definitely suffered in college because I had that freedom. I was out of the house, and that's when things like really turned up a bit. So, but I got back on, got it together, and somehow got through college by the skin of my teeth and got my degree.
That's all that matters is you got it. That's a hard feat to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was very tough, very, very tough. I'm glad that it happened, but you know, it was not easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I unfortunately didn't go to college, but I imagine how hard it is because, like you said, you're given that freedom where you kind of, for the first time, have the choice: do I do my work or not?
Yeah, yeah, and the answer was often no. I was like, no. But I studied, I was studying music, and that was like my safe haven, so all of my classes that had to do with music, I was so happy to do the work in them, and anything else, I was just like, no.
I'm a musician.
Oh, cool. What do you play?
I play guitar and piano, and like I can play like a few riffs on harmonica. Like I learned "Love Me Do" by the Beatles.
Oh,
That's
cool.
yeah, it starts off with harmonica, but it's a pretty simple
Harmonica's on
one.
my list. It's definitely on my list. I keep saying I'm gonna get a harmonica because I really love Tom Petty, and
Yeah,
I
just
just
grab
want
one
to
in the
play.
key of C.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
starts no sharps, no flats, makes it a little easier.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. That's fun. Okay. That's on my list. It's
yeah,
happening.
definitely. So I kind of skipped ahead. My question that I skipped was, what age did your drug and or alcohol use start, or whatever you do? I don't know if you have addictive behaviors.
Yeah, yeah, I got a few. I got a few. But yeah, I definitely started drinking and drugging probably around 16, 15, actually,
Who was the
15.
first person you did it with?
So this is funny. So my mom dropped me off at a house party. I've been trying to do drugs and drink since the eighth grade. I was like, every time I go somewhere and somebody was smoking weed, they go into this room and because they didn't think that we wanted to do it. And they go in this room and close the door. And I'd be like, I just want to smoke. And I'd watch these like Beatles video, like little videos on like my computer as a kid, and I'd be like, I gotta do drugs at some point. Like I had goals to do drugs at a very young age. But long story short, my mom drops me off at this house party, and I was like, finally, it's like my time. And first thing I do is find like a pint of vodka like in their kitchen, and just I pound it. I had never drank ever in my
I was the same way. You just put a great way. I never thought of phrasing it that way, that I was on a mission to do drugs. It sounds cheesy. I look back on this and see how immature I was, but I love the Doors and Jim Morrison, and
Yeah,
he was a walking garbage can of drugs and alcohol. And I was like, I think it would be cool to be like Jim.
be like Jim.
Yeah,
Take up your name. Yeah, yeah. That was the goal. I loved
exactly.
classic rock, and I was like,
Oh yeah,
yeah. I was like, can't wait to find some acid. I was like looking for it all. Like it was on the list. I was just knocking
we
stuff
would have
off
been
my
good
bucket
friends in
list.
high school.
Yeah, yeah. I always like meet people in meetings, and I'm like, well, thank God we all found each other now. We may not have made it here.
Yeah,
you know, it was
I
like,
just think, just imagine if Jim and Jimmy and Janice had the same chance.
oh my God, right? Right? It's so sad too, because it's so much talent, and I don't know, it's rough. And I think, like musicians like us, it happened. I don't know, for some reason that creative thing, there is this like inhibited creativity that would come to me. And
Yep.
it took me years, like before I ever wrote a song again, before I ever felt like I could do anything creative again. I felt so creatively stagnant when I got sober. But one thing I have to say is um I now find myself to be even more creative. I was just caught up in this myth of thinking that my creativity came from these substances. And it was just a matter of like, because the substances kind of like at least unlock you a little bit from what you're going through. It was a cheat code. I had to put in work to get to a place of freedom so that I could creatively express myself without substances. Like that took work, and it took a lot of like pain and being triggered and wanting to at least smoke weed when I wrote my first song and started getting back to music. I mean, I was so triggered trying to
Yeah,
create.
I
It
that
was
was one of
rough.
the things I was curious about. I said to myself, when you get sober, are you still gonna be good at guitar and piano, or are you gonna be not as good?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know, but I think I'm just as good. Like you said, if not a little better now. I haven't played in a
Mhm.
while. I do this too much, the addiction stuff and the podcast, but
Yeah. No, no, no. It's interesting. I mean, it's kind of, I think making sure that these things fit into your life is kind of like when you have other things that you have to kind of do. It's can be hard, but I feel like you always find your way back to the things that you love, like in some capacity, even if it's just like a little like paying homage at the end of your day, like, and just getting it
yeah.
out, like, even if no one ever hears your music, but it's just you always find your way back to it
There's
somehow.
one thing that I love is you never get a better feeling than that finishing note. Like when you played a song all the way through and you just hit that last note, like got it.
Got it.
Yeah,
You're
just
like,
like,
I'm
oh,
here.
I got the song down, done. Last note, done. Next song. It's such a
It's
great
so
feeling
true. It's
because
a
it
good
takes so much
feeling.
to learn a song. People don't realize. Like you learn more. I don't know about you. I learn in parts. I learn the intro, the verse, the chorus, the
Parts, yeah.
outro.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of different working parts in a song.
Very much so. Yeah. No, no, you have to be really patient with yourself
Yeah,
through that
yeah, absolutely.
process. If it stops being fun, like you gotta recalibrate. You gotta have fun with it. Cause I'll overthink. Like if I'm not automatically good at something right away, I'm just like, I'll just put it down. I'll be like, no. But you
Yeah,
have to
no, I'm the same way.
continue. You have to
So
continue.
you did
Wow.
alcohol the first that same night where you were pounding vodka. Did you also try weed?
Yeah, yeah, I tried it all. Pills. I think I ended. No, that was the next day. I got like very into like downers and different like opiates and things, and
Oh, so you
um,
dove
I,
head first into it.
yeah, I was like, I'm here now because I was exposed to a group of people that had everything. It was like everybody would always say, don't hang out with kids in the trailer park. In my high school, I went to a very strange high school, so I grew up in a interesting town where our school district was consolidated. So you had, um, it was quite diverse, very, very diverse, which was really cool because I was exposed to so much. But it was like there was this almost like class war, more so than like racial issues at my school. It was more like there were kids in trailer parks all the way up to like multi-million dollar homes all in one school, because our
I had
school
the same
district is
thing.
so good with that.
I had the same thing, and we
Oh
used to call it.
wow.
We called it Tiny Town, which was the trailers,
Tiny town.
because they were just like small houses. So that was the name it got. And the kid,
Wow.
you hung out in the park in Tiny Town, and those were the rough kids.
They were rough. Yeah, rough around the edges. And all the drugs were there. And
Yep.
like you could get everything you needed in the trailer park.
Yeah.
So I started finding myself over there a lot. And my hometown had a really big heroin problem. And
Yep.
you had a lot of kids stealing their parents' oxys from back surgeries and stuff, bringing them to school. And then, like, after a while, you kind of graduate with opiates. That's the like scary thing about it is, eventually, I mean, not everybody this happens to, but a lot of us, it's like eventually, somebody offers you the the source and you kind of go that route. So that was big. I mean, there's still people just drop, I mean, all over. I mean, it's a huge epidemic, but like, it's sad every time I go home. I either see, someone that used to just be, had so much going for them and they're hanging out outside the gas station strung out. Or you hear about like, I'm like, what happened to Ricky? And they're like, oh, Ricky died like a year ago. Like, where have you been? And it's
Yeah.
just kind of like this like really sad thing. But
Yeah.
I'm
The
just
heroin and
grateful.
the oxys, that was like it really hit the people that were more well off. Like,
Yes.
statistically, historically speaking, we weren't known like, the kids in high school, especially let's call it what it is. It was a white kid problem. It still is very much a white kid problem. And it was because everyone got oxys. And when they ran out, there was nothing else but heroin.
But heroin, and that's what was there for you. Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's so crazy because my dad was very angry at my mom for moving me to this kind of town, like, because it was half a hick town. It was diverse, but it was, kind of had its redneck tendencies. And my dad was very upset because he was like, in the black community, it's like you don't do these kind of drugs, or you just don't, we don't have that type of problem, which is totally untrue. But my dad was so angry with my mother for moving me there, like, these things wouldn't have happened to me if she hadn't moved me there. And I'm like, I would have found drugs no matter where it took me. So,
Yeah, you
you
were on a
know,
mission.
yeah, I was gonna find them. I mean, I pulled geographics thinking that I was gonna get sober. I would move places, and then I'd be high by noon. I think like, oh, this is what I don't need to go to rehab. I don't need to do anything. I'll just move, and then I'd still be high. I got here. I got to LA. I was in Venice, and I was high by noon, and I moved here to get sober. Now, by grace, I got sober 3 months later. I didn't make it too long in LA because, people ride a little different in Los Angeles than they do, back east. So
How
I
so?
was, it was just you. Well, one, I realized I didn't have anybody, so you go and you're in a dope house in LA and you don't know anybody and you're finding yourself in whole new situations that you haven't been in before. Like, so I realized kind of, I think I wanted to die. I had this very towards the end of my using, I was like, I want to die. Like, this is I'm on a mission to die and I don't have the guts to off myself, even though I tried. So I was like, I'll just try to overdose or try to like get myself in a situation where I'll die. And I was doing that. And then I found myself, I was a little more scared than I thought. I wasn't as much of a spring chicken as I thought. So I'd get in certain situations or was around certain people and I'd be like, well, damn, actually, I don't want to die. And, the woman I was renting a room from, she was sober for 14 years. And I I knew she was like sober, but I was just like, I don't know how to, I don't want to stop having fun. And I'd see her go out. She would like get dressed up and she like go out like every night almost. And I was like, wow, she still like has fun, you know? And I just watched her for a couple of months, you know, and she kind of gently realized what was going on with me and gently kind of pushed me in the right direction, but was very, wasn't preachy about it, wasn't weird about it. She did it in a very elegant way that eventually, you know, I had my last run. And I just walked in her room and I was like, how do I find one of those meetings? And then kind of ended up going to a meeting. And you know, I don't know, I think that I believe in God, you know,
Yeah.
God has this way of like meeting you where you are. And like the woman speaking at the meeting was a stripper, and I was like, oh my God, she's not shy and she's sober. I was like, this is rad. I was like, okay, like life doesn't stop. That was what I needed to see to know that life doesn't stop when you get sober. Like that's where I was, you know, and you know, I was in my own path, and I was like, wow. So I just kind of kept going to the meetings. And I was like still smoking weed to like
Yeah, I was
handle
gonna
like
say real quick, let's
detox.
backtrack to your drug use.
Oh
What
yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
so you did heroin. You were saying you were in
Def-
dope houses. What was your
yeah.
main addiction?
Oh wow. So garbage can. Talk about garbage cans. Jim
Yeah.
Morrison. I was a garbage can. If you had it, I wanted it. But the crazy thing is heroin was always on the do not call list. It was always on the list. Cocaine was on the list. I was like, I'm gonna do everything except heroin and cocaine and meth. Okay. I was like, I'm gonna do all the party drugs. I had boundaries. I was like, so therefore I'm not a drug addict like these people. And then, you know, after a while, I started getting bored. There's only so many acid trips you can go on before they all feel like they're the same. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this is the part where like everything looks like melted water. Great. Like, you know, it was just kind of like I got bored. So, and then I was so depressed and I was so depleted that I was like, I need something more. And then, you know, cocaine was something I started doing because it would help me drink longer because I started getting sick every time I drink alcohol. Um, the allergy. And I was, so to keep me going, I started doing cocaine. And then I was around people that had it regularly. You know, I just found myself around the quote unquote right people at the right time that had what I needed. And then when I got to, I was doing a lot of opiates, but I didn't graduate to heroin until I got to LA for the first time. And that's when it was
Who
kind
introduced
of
you to heroin?
so I met a guy. I was driving Uber for like my bread and butter. I didn't have a job. I moved here with no plan. And then I was driving Uber and I got involved with a guy, and he was like meth was like his thing or whatever. But when he couldn't find that, he'd do heroin. Like the opposite. The cocktails we would make as drug addicts, you know. And I just got involved with him, and he's just like, well, why don't you just he's like, you could just do heroin. He's like, why don't you try it? And I'm like, well, fine. I had nothing else better to do. There was nothing better to do. You know, I was going through a breakup. I had no job. I was like driving around LA for a living in a shitty car that like, I got by the skin of my teeth. I had nothing really going for me in my mind. In my mind, I had nothing going for me except for to just let my life waste away. And I think the feeling like you're dying without like actually dying, and then knowing that you could do that all the time, because it was sleep or get high, sleep or do dope for me, because they were the same thing. It was the closest I could be to death without actually dying, so I was too scared to actually go through with it. And I felt like eventually I would die, which, you know, I mean, as we know with this thing, like, you know, there's a few different paths you can take. You know, like you end up in jail. And I'd always be joking, I'm like, I'm too cute for jail. Like,
Hmm.
so I have to die. um so yeah, I mean, I definitely did the gambit. My drug of choice was everything. It was really everything. I always joke and I would say, like, you know, alcohol, I didn't have to wait for a dealer to call me back. So, you know, you could always go to the liquor store. So that would be first if I really had to get out of myself, because the dealer's taking forever to get back to you. And then sometimes I take matters in my own hands and I'd be like, well, I'll just sell it myself. So I always have it. But that saying, don't get high on your own supply. It's really hard to sell drugs when you're loaded all the time and doing your drugs. And then you owe people money. So it's just, yeah, it's a life that I don't want back, truly. And at the time I really thought, it's funny we talked about the 27 club. I really, really was like, the goal is to die at 27. I looked up to those guys. I was like, I thought I was living a rock and roll life. I really did, especially when I moved to Chicago and I had the penthouse, I had the money, like money was rolling in and I was pretty functional on paper, what I thought. I was functional, but my pets suffered. My pets didn't have food because I'd be passed out for days. Part of the amends process, some of that was making amends to my pets. My
What did
cat's
you
bad
finally get a
now.
good job?
I got a great job. Actually,
Okay.
it's interesting. So this is kind of interesting how we can live these double lives as addicts. I actually had a really well-paying job in the thick of it when I moved to Chicago. Right out of college, I got an office job. I had this corporate job and I was selling drugs in their bathroom. I
Oh
had a
shit.
full desk job, corporate situation. But I couldn't really hold down anything until I got sober. That was my longest running job. I was there for 4 years. And then after I left that job, because I think they got me when I was a little bit younger, and then I kind of grew up there. And then once I moved, and I put those people through hell, but once I moved, I couldn't land a job for the life of me. Uh, moved on from that place. So yeah, yeah, it was a rough slope, but I really thought that I was living a very glamorous rock and roll lifestyle. I was like, this is just cool. Like this is the life I always wanted. I wanted to be that messy artist, with like my hair all over my head and like everybody comes to my house to hang out and it's a safe haven for everybody, but it's really just a place for everybody to do drugs. It was just this life that I just, to some people might sound cool, but it got old. It definitely got old. And like my life is still very colorful. And I thought that it wasn't going to be. I thought my life would be extremely boring. I thought it was over. And I have had more fun in the last, I'm coming up on 6 years next month. And like I've had more fun than I had then. I wouldn't trade my best day then for my worst day now, truly.
So let's go back 6 years ago. Tell me
Yeah.
about when you decided to get sober and why you got sober.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, like I said, I went, well, the night that kind of triggered it was actually quite a simple night. I went to an open mic, and there was $1 tequila shots. And I was,
Dangerous.
yeah, very dangerous, very dangerous. I was going through a breakup, so I was drinking my feelings. So I got pretty loaded and couldn't drive my car home. And my roommate, the other roommate, I lived with three other people, was also very much one of us. And he was less drunk than I was, and he drove my car home. And very simple, you would think that, like, we crashed the car or something like that. No, got home and I woke up not knowing what happened, but I was in his room and I didn't know where I was. I had no idea where I was. I was like, what is going on? I'm like, did I sleep with this guy? Did he roofie me? Like, what is going on? And I got up and it's like when you do the walk of shame across the hall to your own bedroom and you don't know where you are. I don't know. It was such a simple night compared to all my other nights, but it was just very I think I saw myself for the first time. Like I actually was like, I remember walking across the hall, getting up and laying in my bed and I made a Facebook status and I was like, why is it that I tell myself I'm never going to do this again and I keep doing it every time? That was the Facebook status. Why I made a Facebook status, I don't know. But I was 20, so, or 23, 24, something like that. So I was like, let's tell the world about it. So then I was sitting there and I just kind of like I really looked at my like I looked at the clothes I was wearing. I looked at the room I was in and I looked at my, my poor pet that hadn't eaten in days and I was just like, what the hell am I doing? Like
Yeah.
why don't I just die? But then I was like, maybe I don't want to. I think I just want to live differently. Like all this time of me feeling like I want to die, feeling suicidal, it's because I don't know how to live. I just actually don't know how to live. I want a good life, but I don't know how to attain it. And I don't know how to do it without being loaded. And I was just sitting there. I felt trapped. But I was like, I gotta do something different. For that moment, I really felt like there was something I could do different. And I was like a teeny, teeny bit willing to see what that looked like in that moment. And that's when I got up. I went into my other roommate's room and I asked her to help me find. I said, "Well, the meetings that you go to, like, is there one today?" She sat down with me, helped me find a meeting. I didn't make it to the meeting until about 8 p.m. There was a later evening meeting. I went and the stripper was there and she was sharing. um, and I was like, wow. And then I love the Grateful Dead. I like spent like summers and summers like just following all these jam bands and this lady had green hair and a Grateful Dead shirt on and she shared at the meeting after the stripper. It was like God was speaking my language the whole time. And like so she stands up and she just shares and she's like, I got 26 years, blah blah. And I was like, wow, like she's been sober longer than I've been alive. That's cool. And I'm just like, what the hell? This place is interesting because everybody was quirky, everybody was cool, and everybody was saying tidbits of how I felt. And I had never experienced that in my whole life. Even trying to go to therapy, like I still couldn't find it. Like it was like I felt it there. And I walked up to her and I asked her to be my sponsor. Um, and she gave me books. She's like, these books cost $14. And I was like, I have no money. And she's like, okay, I'll give them to you. She was like, but you're gonna pay me back because you need to learn accountability. I'm gonna be here next week. She wasn't there next week. I never heard from this woman again, but I got another sponsor. I'm like, maybe she was an angel to get me in the door. I don't know. But yeah, I stayed, I stuck around and it took me until I had 8 days before I ever said anything in a meeting, but I went every day for about 8 days. And then there's a burning desire that you can take. And I took the burning desire and I just shared and I was like, I have 8 days. And all these people came up to me. I mean, like, it was like, I was, first of all, to a young kid that craves attention and validation at that time. I was like, oh wow. I was like, I feel like a celebrity in this bitch. Like, okay. Like, I was like, this is cool. So all these people coming up to you and they check on you the next day. I never had that. I never had people actually genuinely care about me and care about me succeeding at something. I never had that. And to this day, I don't feel even going to church now, I've eventually, I still go to AA, but um going to church and stuff like that. Like I do feel the camaraderie, but I don't feel it the way I feel at when I go to a 12-step meeting. Like I feel this like camaraderie that I've just never felt in my life, and it's just good to have it. It's like an after school snack when you've had a whole day out in the world, being a sober member of society, doing your best. Sometimes we act up and then you go and you like see your people. It's like being at Cheers. Like I used to like joke and be like, the Cheers theme song, you want to go where everybody knows your name. Like,
That
you
they don't
go and
drink.
everybody's like smoking cigarettes outside and they're like, what's up? And I'm like, what's up? How's your kid? It's just a cool thing, and you see the same people around for many years and that's a groovy thing. Some people die and that's the part that I hate. I hate that part. There's people that, they go out at 20 years. That's wild that this thing can still it can still eat you no
It's
matter how much
something,
time you have.
yeah, it's something you have to battle every day. Nobody, I mean, I'm lucky I don't get cravings, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that I'm always doing something. Like, especially like this, I have two more
Yeah.
podcasts today. I have to edit the videos, I have to post them to all the social media. I do a little writing, I
Oh,
do a bunch.
wow.
So I keep myself busy because an
Yes.
idle mind is the devil's playground.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's the only reason I haven't had a craving is I keep myself busy doing something. Like if I was just sitting there doing nothing, that's when a craving might hit.
Yeah, yeah, just twirling your thumbs. Yeah, no, that's a danger zone. Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to
that
keep
good
yourself
word,
busy.
danger zone.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good to know like what is the danger zone. I was at I'm currently working through like another um I'm applying my 12-step knowledge to another area in my life with like sex and love. And I noticed I'm having to go through the same little things that I went through early in sobriety from alcohol and drugs, where like it's like, okay, like that's an area of weakness for me. Like, let me like I didn't go to Vegas for like 3 years. I got sober. Like
That's
I'm not ready for Vegas. And then I did Vegas and I was like, hell yeah. But like there's certain things that I'm just like, I'm not ready to do because now that I'm actually putting my finger on this area, but I know that I can be successful because I've been successful with drugs and alcohol. So I'm grateful that I have something under my belt. And I know that that process works, but keeping yourself busy once again. And like, it's just the same. I think addiction is like this. It doesn't matter like what you're putting in the hole. It's all the same in my mind where I'm just like, okay, you just have to fill the hole with something that is doesn't take from you.
yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, it might be like depleting or like energy depleting to like or tiring, but I'm sure this is like you wouldn't be doing this if you didn't like dig it, like, interviewing these people. And it's good work. It's good service. It's truly good service because people need to hear this because like maybe like somebody won't ever set foot in a meeting. I don't think the 12 steps are the only way for people to get sober or whatever. Like I don't think there's only one way, like I've heard all types of experiences that people have had with like getting sober or getting free from any addiction. I like just it doesn't there's different ways. I think there's different avenues that you can take.
Yeah, I
So
mean, Addicts Anonymous has its own 10-step program, and obviously there's
mhm.
a ton of different programs out there, but I've related to what the Dalai Lama said. He was talking about religion. He said there's no one religion for everybody. That's why we have different religions based on people's different personalities and the way they think and the way they
Mm,
act. So same thing with recovery. I see it as some people just may not click. Some
yeah,
people may click like you clicked. You got to the meeting and it was done. You were in. Some people it doesn't click, but they might go to a different meeting in a different town or just a different time, and there's different people there and it clicks.
and it clicks. Yeah.
It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what the group is named, put it that way.
Yeah,
As long as
yeah,
it's
no.
recovery based, you're good to go.
Recovery based and having camaraderie. Like the camaraderie like
Yep.
saved my ass. Like being able to be at a diner at 2 o'clock in the morning with a bunch of like ex drug addicts like cracking me up about like the time they like had to like suck dick for meth. Like it's just I know that's
Yeah.
vulgar, but it's like it was just so funny because it's like, oh my God, me too. Like everybody's
Exactly.
like, yeah, and like what other scenario do you have people? Because it's like if some of the things that we've gone through, it's like you say it to like a person who can't relate to that, they like wonder if you're okay now. It's like, yo, that was years ago. Like
Yeah.
they're still wondering, like, you good? Like we have to worry about you, And it's funny because, like, when you just talk to people that get it, I mean, you don't have to live in the past all the time, but it was just funny for me to see people. I never saw that. I never saw people that were like living sober. I remember I went to the grocery store with these two people that I met on my recovery journey. And it was the most hilarious experience at the grocery store I think I've ever had. The way they were buying their coffee, it was like being at the store with like it was like three crackheads at the store, but like, but like recovery, like we're like grabbing our coffee and we're like, oh my God, have you ever had these? These are so good. Try them. We're just like buying everything at the grocery store and like can't like put anything down. You're like, yeah, just get it. Just you get it. Definitely get it. It was the funniest thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, wow, what a journey.
So how do you
Truly.
stay sober nowadays?
Um, so for me, I one, I how can I say this? I definitely continue passing it down. I'm like a firm believer in like you to keep it, you give it away. I know it's cheesy, but so I help other women or men or whatever, anybody that needs my help. And then I share my story. So I think your testimony is so valuable, even if it's, just a couple days or whatever, but just somebody hearing that, like, hey, like, this is um what I went through, and I'm on the other side of it. So inspiring, and it really plants seeds. But one big thing that's a non-negotiable for me is I have to have fun. I'm like extremely unpredictable. I keep my life I do live by my calendar, but for the most part, like, I have freestyle days. Like Saturday is a freestyle day. Usually I try to keep it that way. Like, I have to stay free, like, in general. Making sure that I have like so much fun when I go out. I don't even think about using when I go out, and I'll be out till 6 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And then other times I'm tired and I just want to watch a movie at home. But I just try to have fun. I live my life a lot of people that don't know me well, they'll think I'm on drugs when they meet me. It's like, they're like, no person can be this violently happy and energetic, but I have so much energy now. So I just try to stay fun, keep everything fun and fresh, switch it up, switch my style up, just like, do things that kind of feed my soul, like, um, keep a lot of creativity going, and that's kind of what I do. But and then give it away, and make sure I'm sitting down and, like, I sponsor women, and I make sure I go back to the place where I got free and kind of stay there, because that's the thing that's working for me. So I go back to what works, and I keep digging into things with my childhood, because I always find something. I always find something that I haven't visited with yet. Like, oh, that's something that needs my attention. Let's work through this. And I go to therapy. Just keep digging inside to, like, and then having that spiritual piece of, like, not carrying a lot of things with me and leaving it at God's feet is a good rinse and repeat for me. Is like, and I know it sounds like metaphysical to a person that isn't spiritual, but I think having this, like, place where you can put all your stuff, and for people who don't have a relationship with God or don't believe in God, just journaling and burn it. Like, get it out of you, like get rid of that stuff, because that's the stuff that starts turning, it grows weeds. And then, now you got this garden, this beautiful garden that has all these weeds in it, and it's like destroying everything. And then you're drunk or you're high. It might not happen for 20 years, or it could happen tomorrow, but it's like, when you let things go unchecked, you can quickly relapse back into old behaviors. And some of those behaviors can be you drinking or using. So I try to just continue to rinse and repeat. I get full of shit, I get the shit out. Like, don't get spiritually constipated. Like,
It's a good way
so,
to put it.
yeah.
So my last question for you. Do you have
Uh-huh.
any advice for people watching or listening?
Yeah. Yeah. Have fun. Um, and I mean, that's a loaded, like, a statement. I guess there's a lot of ways you can have fun, but it try to not to take yourself so serious and your life so serious. Like, be okay laughing at yourself. Like, the things that you did, like, they're fucking funny. Like, why were you doing that? Like, like, laugh at yourself. Like, don't take this so serious. And I think, like, there's a freedom that comes with not taking yourself so serious, and being able to, like, make fun of yourself, and constantly, give yourself grace. I think it's a really fun way to give yourself grace, is laugh at yourself. Let's be like, what are you doing, girl? And be gentle with yourself. Be cool to yourself, be good to yourself, because um sometimes it feels like all you got is you. And I think that that's a really fun way to find something beyond you, that's beyond this world, to find a spiritual relationship with a higher power, is kind of like building that relationship with you. Like, who are you? Get to know yourself. What's eating Gilbert grape? What's going on with you? Like, really, really, like, getting intimate with yourself. And that's hard to do for a person that hates themselves. But if you start with not taking yourself seriously, you could be like, well, why the fuck do I hate you? Like, like, and what'd you ever do to me? And, like, have fun. This is it's like, we take life so serious, and you're here for 2 seconds, and then you look up and you're gone. You really want to spend it all loaded and hating yourself, and like when you could figure out a way to have fun here.
Yeah.
There's many ways. So have fun. Long story short.
Long story short, that was great.
Yeah.
This has been a great interview. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I had so much fun.
Yeah, me too. So did you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. That's it.
All right, great. So sit tight for me. And for everyone watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check Addicts Anonymous out on Tumblr, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Also, you can check us out at www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you find plenty of resources as well as free literature. That's all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time.